Welcome back to part 2 of this episode with Phil Squire, where Phil's going to talk about his research, the state of sales mindsets, and bring it right up to date with his findings for 2025. I hope you enjoy the episode. Over to Phil. My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. So what did you find, Phil, in terms of with the control group versus the ones that were focusing on those 8 values, the 4 positives, the 4 negatives? What were the findings?
Some of these sales cycles were large and they took a long time, but over a 2.5-year period, the win rate went from 1 in 15 to, I think it was 74%.
Whoa!
Over that time frame. And the total contract value was in the billions because it was significant. Now, some of the win rate, what were the levers? Well, one of the levers was not bidding on contracts that you felt you had no chance of winning.
Correct.
Yeah.
Qualification, critical.
But that was quite interesting because in some cases, you get invited to do a tender where you have no relationship with the client. So it makes it really difficult for you to live these values that we talked about.
Virtually impossible. And in fact, if procurement's in the way, they will actively prevent you as a supply organization from engaging with stakeholders outside of the process.
Exactly.
The process is designed to stop you from using the very values that you believe are important and buyers believe are important. Procurement effectively, I'll say get in the way. My procurement colleagues won't appreciate that. But if procurement get in the way of the stakeholder engaging with the supplier in complex bids, then I think that's a very negative thing that procurement do, personally.
Correct. And I think that was also recognized by the teams. And so there were some deals that we said, this is an unfair competition because we don't know you well enough to be able to put our best solution forward.
And you won't give us access to your stakeholders. So we're going to come second before we start.
Before even we start. And the cost of doing these deals was about $1 million, new sales costs. And
so why would we bid?
Why would we bid? So there was that went on. But there was one lovely story of very positive engagement with a procurement team, which was with Anglo-American big mining company. I can talk about this publicly because we've talked about this in the book.
Perfect.
Because I've written about it and got permissions. But the Anglo was really interesting because literally RFP came in via an email. We brought together a pursuit team. I remember that workshop where we looked at the bid and we looked at what was being asked of a vendor like HP. And it was if the RFP was written for HP, actually. I mean, it was just hit all the notes. But the thing was that there was just no relationship with HP. Anglo bought a few laptops and servers over the years, but really, they didn't even have an account manager for this client. And so what we decided to do was put together a carefully worded email. And the email read something like this: as a dear, whoever it was, massive thanks for sending through the RFP and inviting us to take part. We've just had a 2-day workshop. We brought together some of the best minds that we could think of inside HP. When we looked at your RFP, it was as if it was written for HP. There's no doubt that we can give you what you are looking for. But I'm afraid on this occasion, we simply feel that we can't be involved in the bid process.
Brilliant. Perfect. This is bringing concepts and theories and stories together for me into also a research-oriented view, which is there's a way of turning down an RFP which re-engages the client in a different conversation. But you have to be professionally brave. You have to have confidence.
This is the audacity. When you think back, it takes quite a lot because the natural inclination is you see a $250,000 deal, you know.
And you're like, I can't not bid for that, especially for a trophy brand.
Correct. And it was so interesting.
So what happened? We feel that we can't bid. What was the end of the email? What was the hook?
it was almost that. We'd love to. They didn't suggest what could be done that would make them bid. They just thought, as much as we'd love to, we feel we can't. It was something like that, those kind of words. And
so what happens next?
well, they then got a call. They got a call from Anglo. Of course, Anglo said, we've looked at the vendors we'd like to bid, and we chose you because we felt you could do it.
Yes.
We want you to bid. We want to be able to see your sort of capabilities and so on. What's the reason for you not wanting to bid? And the lead pursuit guy said, well, it's simple, really, that we know technically we can provide everything you're looking for, but we simply don't know you well enough. We don't understand the business. And it's not really just the technology. It's what impact does the technology have on the people using it as well. And so we know if we're going to go through with this bid, it's going to be $1 million of pre-sales costs.
Yeah.
And we also know that 80% of the time it goes back to the incumbent.
Exactly.
And we're just not in a position, given how little we know about you, that we can go ahead. And they were sort of having this conversation, and I don't think it was procurement, maybe it was head of IT, said, well, look, we've got a meeting in London of our IT directors coming to London. We can give you an hour. Come and join a meeting. Just come and meet us. Before you to say no, just come and meet us. They went and they had this meeting, and I'll never forget when they came back, because the bid team were eager to, only 2 people went to this meeting, eager to know how it went on. And it was really interesting. They said, we could tell from the warmth of reception we had with the people in the room that they were wanting to positively engage with us as a business. And they could also sense that they were really pissed off with their current supplier. And so they thought this was a genuine, we want to switch.
This is not in the 80% of incumbent wins. This is the 20% of we genuinely want to switch. So now we know the client has a genuine need
Correct.
and reason to do something different. And if they didn't do something different, something bad would happen on their side.
Correct. That's a very good way of putting it. I hadn't put it into the 20% category, but I know that we had those discussions when we came back. But here's what happened after that. After they came back, had a meeting, and then picked up the phone and spoke to the guy again and said, look, we've had a meeting, brought the whole team together, and we really enjoyed meeting you guys, but we still feel that we don't know you well enough.
Because we've only had one meeting for an hour.
We've only had one meeting. And the guy said, okay, well, what are your thoughts? And he said, what we really want to do is go and visit some of your mines. We want to spend time with some of the technology. If you are open to us visiting a number of your mines, then we are going to be really open to you adding us to your bid list. And the guy said, great, we'd love you to go and visit some of the mines. You get more context. You get to sense some of the frustrations we've currently got in more detail. And so that's what happened. So they visited mines in South Africa and also Chile. And what they realized when they went to some of these mines, which are vast, is that the service level agreements for supporting the technology on some of these sites was simply impossible. It takes you 2 hours sometimes to go through security into a mine. So if a server's crashed on a mine, and you're going to be penalized on a 2-hour response time. When they started to look at the detail of what was being asked, they said the RFP in its current form is not written in the right way.
So this is what I call the tank traps. In an RFP, and I know from having written lots, there are tank traps, not that I've laid, that I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I've written this RFP, and if I find a supplier that challenges me and says, we're not going to bid because we don't know you, but what we do know is, in the way that the RFP is written, there are quite a few tank traps that if you're not aware, you will fall into no matter who you appoint.
Yeah.
We'd be very happy to explain where those tank traps are, but we're still not going to bid, but we're very happy to have a conversation with you. Would that help? Most procurement person is going to go, I'd be quite brave to ignore that.
Yeah.
Because if we appoint and those tank traps turn up, well, I might get fired.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So I know I'll have a conversation with you about them.
Absolutely. So I think at this stage, HP said we will bid because, again, it's a big investment, both the risk to Anglo of opening up conversations with general managers of the mines, for example, and then HP deciding not, so there was a lot at stake. So at this stage, HP said, yes, we want to formally enter the bid on the basis that we can have these conversations. And of course, when they came back from the mine, there were two things that happened. They were small but significant. One was that one of the things that kept the general managers awake at night was human asset tracking, knowing where people were on the mine from a health and safety point of view. And HP were developing this technology at their lab in Bristol, which could enable them to monitor where humans were in a mine environment. It wasn't launched on the market. It was one of the patents. It was a new thing that they were emerging, nothing to do with the RFP this. It was just something that they'd noticed and heard. And when they came back, there were two things. There was that, as well as the fact that there were tank traps and maybe you should rewrite parts of the RFP because it's not written in the right way. Anglo then went down to the laboratory in Bristol because they were really interested, nothing to do with the RFP. But the fact is, it showed Anglo the resources that they're buying into beyond the RFP itself, the innovation, the technical innovation.
Exactly.
Nothing to do with the RFP, but it really helped develop that appreciation of who HP were and just generally how they like to help clients solve client problems beyond the RFP. Anyway, the long story of it was that they helped work with the team to write the RFP in a slightly different way.
So now HP's fingerprints are all over the RFP.
Correct.
But to your point, Phil, about in a very authentic way. This wasn't manipulation. This was insight-based, revealing where the problems were in the RFP, helping the client, and then saying, yes, we're very happy to bid. And it's a fair playing field. All suppliers now get the revised RFP.
Correct.
But of course, HP have an advantage. That's not manipulation. It's that they've invested.
They've invested in the relationship. And it was both ways because it was Anglo also investing in HP because they were prepared to make that investment in this supplier that they didn't really know.
Exactly.
As well as HP investing in them by flying people to these mines. And then the long and short of it was that HP won this particular contract. And it also involved in a relationship with BT and HP working together on voice data as well as the IT infrastructure. And that took 9 months. And that was incredible. So they went from no relationship to a £250,000 deal in 9 months. And that's just an example of
exactly
innovation, tactful audacity, client centricity, authenticity, all of the positive mindsets coming together and reflecting on those kind of stories. There were many other brilliant stories, but that was super brilliant.
Now, just out of interest, Phil, once you had now a framework, did you go to 100 suppliers and get their salespeople to fill in a questionnaire to find out, that 90% of customers go, these are the values that we don't like and these are the ones that we want?
Yeah.
Did you test the framework, go back out to sellers and go, let me see if 90% of sellers have all the negative traits and that's why there's a problem?
We've done that since the doctorate. So the doctorate proved that the mindsets actually worked.
Yep.
But the journey didn't stop there because the journey in a way had only just started.
Yes.
It was the foundation. So yes, of course, we've been back and I can share maybe in the second half or in the next 10 minutes what we've done to kind of move the story on.
So why don't you talk about that now, about how you've moved the story on?
The way we decided that it's been 15, 16 years since that first research project was done. And over that time, of course, we've been working with clients, working with salespeople, seeing evidence across different sectors of different industries, the mindset's working. But one of the tools that we have also built is a self-assessment tool. And the self-assessment tool is collecting data from salespeople about their perception of where they are against the sales mindsets. And we realized earlier this year that we have over 1,500 now self-reflections. And we've also got studies of clients who've done a self-reflection at the beginning of a program, self-reflection at the end, because there's always this question that you're asked, is it possible to change?
Exactly. That was my next question was,
is it possible?
Yeah, because you've got inside human beings, even at a simple level, I understand, you have core beliefs, you have values, which are your own values, you then have company values, and then you've got behaviors. And the question is, you can tell someone what the company values are, but can you fundamentally change someone to adopt those values? Or is it too ingrained in our psyche?
No, it's such a good question because we always get asked this question. So you've got personality and you've then got values. One of the things we do is talk about the difference between personality and values. You can have an extrovert, for example, who is authentic, who's client-centric, who is creative, but you can also have an introvert who's authentic, who's client-centric. Personally, I think personality is difficult to change. I think that's deep, it's ingrained. But we're not born with values. We acquire them through parental upbringing, through life experiences, through work experiences. Of course, that suggests that values can be shaped.
Yes.
How easy is it to change? I think it's like anything. It's something that you first of all need to be aware of, and then you need to practice. And you need to do it in a programmatic way. Yes, you can read a book. These are the 4 mindsets. That's obvious. Going from that into embedding that into everything you do and how you think goes quite deep. A lot of what we do is we take people on a reflective journey where they start to explore their personal values, link it to the values that customers want, and then start providing frameworks and tools that get them to apply those values across all points of engagement, whether it's a negotiation or whether it's a presentation or a qualification meeting. So yes, we've got evidence of companies now who've done this before and after, and you can shift the needle.
Interesting.
One of the things that we found with the self-assessments is that we have this concept called winner's circle, which is if you score above 80% in the positive mindsets, you're in the winner's circle. So if you look at all those 4, as an average, you would look at the data and say, actually, we're about 70, 74%, quite close to the winner's circle. But when you start to look at what percentage of all the respondents are above 80% in all 4, that figure drops down to 10.
Wow.
And so you may self-score very highly on proactive creativity and tactful audacity. But if authenticity is low, you may think audacious, but your client will not think that.
Exactly.
They will see it as the opposite.
They'll see it as arrogance. Yes.
Arrogance, correct. And we don't feel we've pulled that data out of our data set until this new report that we've just done. So the story is, it's like spinning plates. You need to keep them all spinning to be able to call the winner's circle. So yes, we believe you can, but it takes time and you can't do it. It's not like picking up a book and reading it. You've really got to work at it.
Exactly.
And then you've got to have the whole ecosystem of how you reward and how you train and how you coach. There's so many different dimensions to it that if you want to create a culture around the sales mindsets, you've really got to approach that from a holistic perspective. It's not just the mindsets. It's not just the skills and the tools. It's the whole system with which you want to engage with your clients. And we've got clients that have embarked on that journey and seeing the fruits of that through their performance figures. We've got a big project that's now public with Royal Mail Group, where they've won 2 awards with their program, where we've shifted the mindsets. It's linked to many, many opportunities which have since closed. and a program that's been running now for 4 or 5 years. So it is possible to do, but you've got to have people at the top who really want it to happen and believe that it's important to happen.
That's the insight for me also here, is that the sales leader, the CRO, the sales director, whoever it might be, has to fundamentally understand and believe mindset has a big impact on win rates, the lag indicator, but more importantly, the way customers perceive your salespeople.
Yeah.
Because that's not just about winning a deal, that's about a long-term relationship and about retention.
I know you sadly couldn't make GST, but a question that we often pose to the audience, what would you rather? Would you rather have people with the right mindsets, but not necessarily the right skills and competence? Or would you rather have people with the right skills and competence, but the wrong mindset?
It's an obvious answer. I'd always take the mindset.
So when you ask the question, you always get the answer, I'd much rather people with the right mindsets. But I think the problem that exists is that the leaders are under so much pressure to get these quarterly
short-term results.
These short-term results, that they default to lag indicators and they don't look at lead. And as we've said, mindsets is a lead indicator.
Exactly. But this is really important, Phil. I think that's critical. I've worked in the recruitment industry at scale. And I think one of the problems is often, because of the pressure on short-term results, we recruit for technical skills and what we call experience in sales. Have you built a sales pipeline? Have you built sales reports? Do you understand how to measure the 8 key dimensions of pipeline velocity? Blah, 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 whatever it might be. And we recruit for that because we believe that's a shortcut to success.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, and I was talking to a CEO about this a while ago, I would much rather recruit for what we were calling then attitude than technical skill. We can train technical skills. You can't change mindsets easily. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's possible, as you say, but it's difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult to do. And so it's interesting what you say about recruitment, because it's so difficult to make the right decisions on recruitment, as we know.
Yeah.
How would you change your interview process so that you recruit to the mindsets? How would you go about in an authentic way? How would you establish how they think? And of course, you can do it. But it's interesting, when we interview for people joining Consalia, we ask them to share with us pivotal events that have shaped who they are.
Exactly.
So the selection of the pivotal event tells us a little bit about them, but then we go into what is it? What did they do, having had that pivotal event that has helped shape them into the person they are today? And what we're looking for, their ability to reflect at a deep level, and also what are we hearing from the way they're telling their stories that links to the 4 mindsets that we're looking for.
Exactly. And it might be, if you look at the consulting industry, getting into what was then the Big 5, when I went in 96, it was challenging then. I think it's probably even more challenging now. There were multi-stage interviews. I don't think they codified it this way, Phil, but they were looking for basically a big part of what they wanted was mindset. Do you have the ability to engage with our customers, our clients, in a way which is going to challenge them, but in a respectful way? Do you have a client service mentality? And you do that by having lots of different partners and directors and consultants interview you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that they have very sophisticated methods of recruitment, but it's a really big question. But I think to the point that perhaps you made earlier is what's changed. One is that the percent of salespeople who sell in a way that customers want has risen from 10%. This is taking 80% of the respondents, similar metrics that we're looking at, and that's moved to 30% or below. So it's shifted from 10 to 30. So I think it's still a long way off, but shifted in the right direction. So we're really pleased to have seen that shift. But the interesting dimension to the research in this world in which we live of artificial intelligence is that there's a very important nuance that clearly with artificial intelligence, you now have incredible tools that can enable you to show up having done your research with insights that are relevant. In fact, there's no excuse for not turning up to a meeting as prepared as you could be.
Exactly.
In a sense, the benchmark has risen, I think, because the expectation there is if you've got all these tools, it doesn't take much time to do some pretty interesting research. But coupled with AI, this is a personal view, I guess, but we've seen it also in lots of the interviews, is complacency in the sense that a lot of AI, without that human connection, it's going to be seen through that, yes, this is an AI generated email to try and get a meeting with me. So there's a lot of caution expressed by buyers or concerns about salespeople not thinking through deeply enough how they use the AI to turn up in an authentic way.
Exactly. I think this is at the heart of it, Phil. Personalization at scale, which is what we now have, is forcing buyers to say, I can't tell if this is really human or AI. I think it's AI. I'm not going to take the risk. I'm going to withdraw behind the corporate firewall and ignore anything that comes in.
And I think we have serious concerns. And some of the words that buyers have used and has really triggered a nuance to the mindsets that we talked about is they talked about intellectual dishonesty. Two different buyers use the word intellectual. Someone said that they wanted intellectual honesty, and another buyer talked about intellectual dishonesty. So that's manipulation. And intellectual honesty is really accentuating authenticity. That leads to the integrity, authenticity. But the word intellectual is so interesting. And I think what AI is enabling salespeople to do now is to have information, have data, but they want original thinking. So the nuance, if you imagine, we talk about this construct of a caterpillar and a butterfly. So if you imagine the wings of a butterfly, on one of the wings you've got AI, and on the other wing you've got IA. So the wings are closed together, the I's join up and the A's join up. So this is part of me getting into a sort of metaphor of transformation. But the IA is intellectual authenticity and the AI is artificial intelligence. So even the word artificial
exactly
is contrasted to authenticity. And then you've got intelligence and intellectual. So AI can give you the intelligence, but the intellectual is going to make sense of the intelligence so that when you turn up, you have that original thinking, and that's your source of differentiation as a seller.
It is. And being authentic, Phil, I've written a couple of papers quite recently. One about the change. I think there's a reset coming in the agency world in 2026 for all sorts of reasons. I've written a paper, which I'm now syndicating with people, about where my thinking's gone and why it's gone there. But in the beginning of the paper, it says, this is basically a research paper that draws on LLMs. So I've used ChatGPT to be a fire starter of thought. It draws upon research papers that I've added into my LLM so that I've created a custom GPT in a private environment. And it's my original thinking based upon research and discussions with customers. When anyone reads it at the very beginning, it's like, this isn't just me. It's an amalgamation of different sources. But I've then brought it together and gone, what do I think this means?
And that's exactly intellectual authenticity.
Exactly. I think so. I hadn't termed it that, but now you've said it, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to be.
That's exactly what buyers are looking for from sellers. We expect you to do the research. So use the tools. Don't just use the tools and let the tool do all the writing. You need to put this layer. So we used AI tools to do the thematic analysis of all the interviews, but none of the thematic analysis identified intellectual authenticity as a mindset. They just didn't do it. That word was not used.
No.
But that was the added value.
That's the human added value and the human insight.
Human added value, sort of making sense. How do you see beyond what AI is giving? And I think that links very much to what is the purpose of being human?
Exactly right, Phil. Now, there's a separate podcast there, probably altogether. I'm very conscious of your time. You've been very kind with your time. Do you want to just give 3 recommendations for sales leaders looking into 2026, into what will be a very difficult market with buyers that are now more skeptical and are withdrawing? What would be your kind of recommendations for a sales leader thinking about what they do with their sales team next year to engage more authentically with buyers?
I think the first thing is to kind of reflect on what is the problem you're trying to solve, and ask yourself the question, in terms of all the objectives we have next year, are we trying to design a faster caterpillar, meaning become more efficient or more productive in what we're currently doing? Or do we need to change to become a butterfly? Because I think if it's a transformational change, what you need to do as a leader, it takes longer. You really need to think through the steps of winning hearts and minds on that journey. And I think sometimes people treat a problem as a change when it's transformation that they need. They need to shift mindsets in order to achieve the goals. They can't just try and do what they've been doing, but more of tinker with it. But it depends really. So the leader really needs to think about, is this a change issue or is it a transformation issue? I think that's one of the things. I think this whole topic of intellectual authenticity is so relevant in today's market. It's a slightly dystopian society in which we kind of live. And I think the skill of critical reflection that you need as a core competence, I think, for sellers today is actually key. So I've got 2. I'm trying to think of what the third would be.
Let me add one to see if this resonates, because it really struck home when you were talking. When we're recruiting salespeople, from what you've now said, my view has definitely shifted, which is you have to be interviewing for the values, the mindset, as well as some basic sales skills. But the mindset is absolutely critical.
Yeah, of course. I think it's so critical. And of course, arguably I'm biased, but this is based on so much customer research that I know it's focused on the operating system, not on the apps that sit on top of it. And that's for recruitment. It's for how you lead. It's for how you coach. It affects so many different parts of the business.
It does. Because we send these people out into the world and they meet customers. If you've got 100 salespeople meeting 2 customers a week, you've got 100 interactions per salespeople. So that's 10,000 interactions with customers. Well, you want to make sure that they've got the right mindset and the right values so that when they show up, you're not in the 90% of it is all rubbish. You're in the 30% or hopefully more of customers saying, that was a good interaction. I'm not buying right now, but that was a valuable interaction. You're on my list of people to come back to.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Just to finish off that bit, as a procurement person, I would be in the same category. My view was 90% of sellers actually weren't adding huge value and weren't people that I would maintain a relationship with. And that was sad.
Well, that's why I think what you're doing is so interesting in the sense you're coming at this whole topic from having been on the procurement side. So people are going to believe in you and your stories. And so you have an awful lot of credibility in suggesting to salespeople what they should be doing.
Thank you. And also your research now has given me frameworks that I can reference and source to say, Phil's done an awful lot of work on this and there's huge amounts of research depth that validates what we instinctively kind of knew but rarely practice. And that's the important thing. Phil, it's been amazing, genuinely amazing.
Thank you.
Where can people find out more about you?
Well, there's obviously the website, which is www.consalia.com. I'm on LinkedIn. It could be, for those that are interested, we could put a link to the recent state of the sales mindset research.
Definitely.
I don't know if that's what you'd like to do.
In the show notes? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there is the free sales mindset survey that people can do on our website as well if they're interested in the topic. So I'm fairly easy to find. If any of your listeners want to know more, happy to speak.
Phil, thank you ever so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.